I majored in criminology, always, wanted to get in the head of criminals and understand, societal patterns. I've always been fascinated by patterns. So I became very depressed. And so I saw this little ad in a local rag for a Reiki, and I went and had a Reiki session. When I'm working with people and I'm looking at their silver thread, for example, going back into past lives and things, or even, most things can actually be resolved in this lifetime. We're not actually meant to be living in all our past lives and things. We're meant to be in this life.
Welcome to Soul Chats, the podcast where I delve into the depth of human experience and explore what it is to be a human as we embark on a journey of self-discovery, reflection, and meaningful conversations that truly nourish the spirit. From profound insights to heartwarming stories, each episode is truly a sanctuary for your soul. Get ready to be inspired and connect with the essence of who we truly are. This is Soul Chats. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Good. I like your little backdrop there. It's a nice one.
Yeah, well, it's probably nicer than the real backdrop.
I know. I'm sort of like, I know exactly. I'm like, maybe I should just put a backdrop on.
This is how I get my $3 million penthouse.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it creates a vision, we create it, we build it in the virtual, and then it'll show up in the reality.
So we were in the UK and, we were in Auckland for 14 years, and then we were in the UK and for about 18 months. And then we got transferred back to Sydney. So just for Salim's work.
Right. Yeah. And you're in Sydney now, aren't you?
Yeah.
You like it?
I love it.
Good.
I absolutely love it. Like,
nice.
When you get somewhere and the energy is just your energy, like vibing with it, and it's the weather's amazing. It's a very vibrant.
Cool.
And so living here, we're just over the bridge. We're one stop from the city. And yet it's like the most lush green foliage, amazing bush. They've got very incredible wildlife. You wake up to the birds screaming.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They're crazy. It's like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, so it's nice when you get to places like that and you can kind of let your energy expand a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And my older daughter, who she really struggled with our move to the UK because she's very, she was very, she'd found her people in Auckland and everything. And we moved to the UK, and that was terribly difficult for her.
How old was she?
She was 15. And
that's a hard time.
It's a really hard age. And it's the age my mother moved us to Brisbane when I was 15. So somehow I repeated a cycle, which was so interesting for me to observe, because you don't even know you're repeating cycles until you suddenly go, holy crap, and you check back in on those ages and you see repeating cycles, which I find amazing, patterns, fractal patterns.
Oh, absolutely.
Incredible. But she did say recently that, which I thought was amazing. She said, I'm actually really glad we had that experience, because in London, you can be anything.
Yeah.
And so what she learned over there, when she dipped into her reserves of power, which she just had to find to get through it.
Yeah.
What she found was that she could express herself through clothing, through energy, in a way where she didn't always feel so visible for standing out. So
I know.
She was able to get a little more eclectic with her clothes, stand out.
Well, it gives you permission. Like I moved my daughter to Holland when she was 9 to 11, and that was really good. It was just a really good look. That was easy and all that. Then we came back. Then we went back from 14 to 18, and it was similar. It was like challenging because she left her friends, and it was a hard time. But her growth was amazing. And we used to go over to England regularly. And what I loved about London was that you can't even get crazy enough to stand out.
No, you really can't.
You're just like everything is there. Like it doesn't matter. Like mohawk, half naked guy walking down the road with a mohawk, and people don't even bat an eyelid. It's like so. It's like you
So
know,
true.
yeah. And so what I loved about that is like the freedom in that. The
Yes.
freedom in that is just like, oh my goodness, there's not many places, maybe New York or something like that, where it
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
sort of expressive, and population has a lot to do with it. Obviously, it's like you've got like such a dense population in that area, plus the fact that London in particular is so old, and there's so much that's happened there, that's grown there, and there's like different communities that's come there and different
Yeah.
villages that have
Yes.
merged there and all that stuff. So it's such a fascinating place.
It really is. I couldn't agree more. And, I lived there for 14 years
Wow.
when I left uni. And so, most of my adult life was actually in London until I had kids. And once when I had been out with some friends and I bought this underwear, one each 7 pairs, one for each day of the week. It had the name of the day on it. And my friend bet me, well, she said, if you wear your underpants outside of your jeans all the way home, I will buy you anything you want at Ottolenghi, which was this incredible bakery that I was obsessed with. And so I put these underpants on outside of my jeans and wore them all the way home through town on the train and got home. And honestly, hardly anyone even noticed. And the next day I took her down to Ottolenghi and I was like, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. And I just emptied her wallet and she was like, I'm never daring you to do anything ever again.
It's so funny because, like, yeah, it's a different deer if it was in New Zealand.
Yeah,
It's a bit
totally
more
right. You
up
would
your
you would have
brave,
a whole different
definitely.
experience. I mean, you
Yeah.
really earn your bakery food there.
So I know a little bit. Obviously, I've looked into a little bit of your background and things like that. I don't know that much about you before we've met, recently, which is amazing. And I like it. Oh my God, like looking into what you've done, it's so awesome. Like what a journey you've been on. It's phenomenal. So you actually studied, like double majored in psychology and sociology.
Yeah, so I was at university and I majored in criminology.
Wow.
And I love criminology. I've always loved crime movies. I've always, wanted to get in the head of criminals and understand, societal patterns. I've always been fascinated by patterns.
Wow.
So, however, whatever work I've done, I've always looked for patterns. And, even in my clinic on my table, I see patterns all the time and I see repeating patterns. And, that gives me such food for the healing journey. And then I finished my degree and I started a master's and then about 3 months into the master's, I thought, "Oh, it's just not resonating because I really started a master's because I wanted my own private office in the library because I always thought that was so fancy. And then I got it, this tiny, tiny little cubicle. And I was in there for about a couple of months. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. And then what? So then I get my master's, then I get my PhD, and then what? Then I teach at university. Like, I don't want to teach at university. It's not, where I'm going. Or I could work with the police, do forensic analysis and things, profiling. But the main thing for me was that they were studying the wrong areas. So, while they were studying crime, I was like, what is the happiness gene? What is the thing that brings us into happiness? Like, why can't we look at this whole flip side? And when we're studying all the drugs and psych and things, and looking at all the stats, they kind of throw the placebo effect out. So they say, okay, well, we've got to take into account the placebo effect, but we're just going to chuck that out the window because those ones don't count.
Yeah.
And all I could ever think about was, but if we can actually create that by just, thinking that it's doing something and we can actually create this result, surely that's the most important result out of all of the results,
That's the interesting thing to study. Absolutely. The other things have got like the components in place, and its cause and effect is really simple to see. Whereas when we look at placebo, where's the cause and effect? That's fascinating.
Absolutely. And if our brains are that powerful, because, my first job in London is I worked in a secure lockup mental health facility. And
you're crazy.
And I loved it. But these places for me, I couldn't believe it because, I was working with these psychiatrists and I'd pull out the files and I'd have a look, and each person was on like 10 drugs, and 6 of those drugs were to control the side effects of other drugs or to control the side effects of the side effects of other drugs.
Oh my goodness.
And so they would be on 10 drugs, but they were actually only on 2 or 3 tops, but all the other ones were to manage the side effects.
Oh my goodness.
Nothing about any of this has ever made any sense to me. I was always like, how can the body hold this much medication? How can we hold this much toxicity? How can anybody think that this is a healthy way forward for us?
No.
That we have so much medication in us and there is no other option in allopathic medicine.
Oh my goodness.
It blew my mind. So I just could not get on board ever with that mode of thinking.
Oh my God. I mean, honestly, don't get me started. I mean, it's such a big topic that I just get so worked up about. It's crazy. My mother actually died of alcoholism, but
wow.
She actually didn't die of alcoholism because she died of the fact that her liver shut down, obviously, and then the concoction of drugs that she ended up like this and then that and then this and then that. Like, it was ridiculous. And the side effects that she was having from the drugs that didn't have anything to do with alcohol. Like, it would have been better to just put her on nothing and just let alcohol take its time, like whatever. It would have been a better quality of life to go. It's just, I know that most doctors are trying to help and stuff like that, but when you see what those, if somebody's liver's stuffed, don't put more chemicals in there.
I mean, we really it's I mean, like you say, it's a whole can of worms that's probably a topic for another day.
And this is exactly why we're down the rabbit hole that we're in and what we do, because it obviously it was very obvious to you that was not the way.
Yeah, well, the thing that really set me on a different path was I had this is my whole other life. When I was a teenager, I had an eating disorder. I was very insecure. We moved to Brisbane. Everyone was very beach bunny, out in their G-strings and things, and I felt really insecure. I developed an eating disorder, and I also I was a gym bunny. I became a gym bunny. I became obsessive about my weight, and I started bodybuilding. When I was training one day, I had a very, very bad shoulder injury because it was old days. We didn't have all the fancy weights and things. It was an old pec deck, and it hyperextended my rotator cuff, and I completely shredded it basically. So I had about 20% movement in my right arm for about 4 or 5 years. And in those 4 or 5 years, I had steroid injections, I had constant physio, I had endless medications, I was in agony all the time. And then I went to a medical show in the UK when I moved to London, and I had a Bowen treatment. And she realigned my hips, and she just did a few gentle things, and I got up and I literally fell over because I had not been straight for so long. And
tell
it felt
a little bit about Bowen. Like, what is the method of Bowen?
Yeah, so Bowen is like sort of a very simple rolling move. So, we do these little rolling moves over specific muscles, tendons, and ligaments in the body, and insertion points like, between the thigh and the hip, for example, in the inguinal ligament. So we we do these little rolling moves, which are fascial moves, and they stimulate, because the fascia is like a chemical signal to the brain, right? It carries all the nerve signals, and we stimulate a brain signal that sort of gives the body permission to let go. So if you imagine, if you're in a supermarket and and somebody bumps you quite hard, you kind of like, oh, that's all right. But if somebody went like that, you'd be like every part of you would sort of stand on end. So those very gentle fascial moves actually create a stronger impulse in the brain than the big moves do sometimes. And although I incorporate both, I definitely notice that, when someone's very traumatized and when they're holding a lot of pain or emotional, depression, anxiety, these sorts of things, that the gentle moves and holds and breaks allow a much deeper kind of processing and release to happen.
So you got into that after that treatment. Obviously, you stood up and went, "Oh my God, this is something."
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what the hell this is, but and then she said to me, "Give your shoulder 10 days, because the shoulder maneuver, we tell people to wait 10 days." So I went off and I thought, and then literally 10 days later, I woke up and I could move my shoulder about 50% more. And that was literally just on the table in a medical show, 20 minutes. And I was so shocked. And then I went, so I started studying, I started trying to find out what all this stuff was. And I was working in fashion in London. And it's very soulless, high fashion, and very, very image conscious and everything. And so I became very depressed. And so I saw this little ad in a local rag for a Reiki, and I went and had a Reiki session. And again, that just blew me away. I was just like, what the hell is all this stuff? What is this whole other world that I don't know about? What is going on here? And so I went and started studying that, and I just started inhaling natural therapies, natural modalities. I left all my work and everything. I went to work for a natural health company to learn more and more and more, just to suck in whatever I could, knowledge-wise, and it just completely transformed my path. It knocked me onto a different path, which I think happens with a lot of people. They have an accident, or they have some kind of health crisis or relationship crisis, and this other part of them unfolds, and that part of them is sort of their soul part, which is starving, and it's suddenly found some oxygen or some water, and it just can't get enough, and that's how we all tend to end up on these paths, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, going down another rabbit hole, and I won't go down here, but I was talking to my brother about that, about DNA and the sort of what not everybody has that awakening, because it all depends on that. There is a component, I feel there's a component not just to the soul journey and the soul agreement and destiny and blueprint of what you came here to do. I also feel like there's a DNA component that that is awakened in those moments. And so there is abilities and gifts that are awakened, and not everybody has the potential necessarily, or even the destiny of that. And so obviously that alignment of what your soul destiny was and your DNA and awakening happened, because those gifts are there. I mean, it was obviously a homecoming for you, a realization that this is me, this is what I'm, the gifts and that I have in me. It's not, I don't believe when someone like yourself, when people just go all in on the path and they all of a sudden activate these amazing gifts, I believe that they were there. I believe that was a DNA activation as opposed to skills learned. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. And I think those people are often the black sheep in the family. So they often, During my childhood, I constantly asked my mother if she was sure I was hers. Was there any way I could have been swapped at birth? Like,
That must
how
have been
did she
horrible
know?
for your mum.
Must have been really. And she was always like, I can promise you you're mine. I'm like, are you sure? Because the babies used to go into another room. How do you know I didn't get swapped? Apparently, I was just asking this all the time. And I never, I always felt weird, like I'd been plonked into this family. And I love my family. Like, I'm so close with my siblings, and had a very complicated mother, a lot of mental health problems. And I think this is another area that brings us all together is when this is gift activating as well, because we become hyper vigilant, super empathic, hypersensitive, because we have grown up in dangerous environments, right? And we have grown up in highly unpredictable, inconsistent, dangerous environments. And when we have something like that, and you would know this in the environment that you've grown up in as well, we are we develop this hypersensitivity to our surroundings, because our danger signal is set much higher than the average person. And that that makes us much more trigger happy, and much more hypersensitive to criticism and all these sorts of things for a long, long time, until we begin to understand the trauma behind it. As we start to work through the trauma behind it, that hypervigilance becomes our gift, because we learn how to hold the balance of the empathic nature without actually taking everyone's stuff on as ours. Whereas before that, it's very hard. We take everything personally. Everything belongs to us. We're responsible for everyone's happiness, and then we slowly start that healing journey, and we get to this place of balance, where we are much more able to hold our gifts without actually losing ourselves in attachment to other, external validation.
Absolutely. I see in you talk a bit about like trauma and fragmentation. I like the way that sort of refers to this as well, that through like say various traumas or upbringing, that we fragment ourselves. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the way it's shown to me in visions and things, and when I'm working with people, is so if you imagine that when we're coming into choose this body, choose this vessel for this lifetime, we choose two lines to ride in on, and one of those is our soul line. We don't choose that. That is our silver thread to all that we have ever been, since our soul's conception. But we also choose an ancestral line to ride in on, and those two lines meet at a certain point before the body, and then they form a DNA strand, and then they drop down into the body, and that is like the soul landing. So that's sort of how it was shown to me one day really clearly. And then when I'm working with people and I'm looking at their silver thread, for example, going back into past lives and things, or even, most things can actually be resolved in this lifetime. We're not actually meant to be living in all our past lives and things. We're meant to be in this life. But from birth, we have 0 to 7 are the formative years, and those years are super important for us forming our belief system and identity about how we fit into the world. And if you have a lot of trauma in those years, and I did, then you develop all these coping mechanisms, right? You learn how to mask yourself very well to survive. And then from 7 on, I call it layering. So say, you have a terrible incident at school and you accidentally pee your pants. That's going to be really traumatic for a child in school. And that is a moment where, say, you remember everyone laughing at you, you remember the trauma, you remember it really clearly. And in that moment, you have what I call a freeze frame. And it's a frozen moment. and you leave a little piece of yourself there,
Right.
and then you carry on. And then something else happens, and a little piece of you is left there. And that piece that's left behind is the piece that enables you to carry on and survive.
Mm.
Because if you took it with you, your shame would be unbearable. Your emotions and your grief, your anger, it would be unbearable. So we park a bit and we carry on. And so this is often what people are talking about when they talk about, soul reclamation or
Retrieval thingies.
soul retrieval, these sorts of things. Well, you're really going back to these moments in time, and you're reuniting them with your current self. So you're bringing the past, the amygdala, into the present, the limbic system, and you're joining them back up so that you can feel more whole, so that you can just feel more.
Absolutely. And do you use your like Bowen and Reiki and all that to facilitate those retrievals or those creating a wholeness?
Yeah, so I work online or in person. So I work a little differently online. If I'm working online, I tend to have a chat. I might do a timeline. I'll just see where I'm drawn, and then I'll do a tune in, and I get what I call a priority. And the priority might not be what someone's expecting, because they're always thinking of the big things in life. But sometimes before those big things, there was one little thing that actually was the kickoff point for all of it. And if you get into the right one, it's like a domino effect of healing. I call it the domino effect. And that can go into past lives as well as the future. So it's very, very powerful getting into those pivotal freeze frame moments. And if I'm working with someone in person, I'm releasing, like I'm touching their whole body all the time, and I'm finding little locks, and in that lock I'll find an emotion or a memory or something. And I could find a hidden inner child in a tiny little locked glute muscle, or it could be their whole back. But people will, I say to people, everything is energetics and magnetics. Everything is waves and spirals. So if you are in a certain energy, you are going to be magnetically pulling certain things in. And the reason people don't understand why they're magnetically pulling things in is because they don't understand how they are operating completely from the subconscious. And the subconscious is not at all in alignment with the conscious mind. And so as those two start to come back into alignment, and you start to pull pieces back together, and you start to allow, the grieving process to happen of everything that you've been through, then it's very, very powerful.
So do you relate that those little freeze frame moments to the subconscious?
They're hidden in the subconscious.
Right. Yeah.
They're hidden there. Yeah. So the subconscious mind, the egoic mind, wants to protect us at all costs. So the ego will step in and say, that's too dangerous. Don't show your real self. Don't be vulnerable. Don't say what you're really thinking. That's dangerous. So, walk out there and big up yourself, or walk out and make yourself as small as possible. It's different for everyone. But we develop these sophisticated mechanisms for carrying on without that piece of us. And that piece of us stays hidden until we consciously go and retrieve it.
And how does the placebo work in this? Like, we sort of spoke a little bit about the placebo and how that was a fascination for you. How do you kind of, bring this into that, or in your work?
So again, the placebo is like the subconscious mind, right? So if you believe that if you've got this belief system subconsciously that someone else has more power over you than you do, for example, then when you see a doctor, and there are amazing doctors out there now. We're getting many more integrative doctors, many more curious doctors. But, if you old school went to, believe that only medicine could help you, and that doctor told you he had this new drug and it was amazing and was going to sort you out, your subconscious child, because basically the subconscious is like the inner child, your subconscious child is so relieved to hand over the reins of power to someone else that they create a healing capacity right in that moment, just as soon as you have handed over the reins. Because it's really hard work being fully conscious and responsible for our health and healing journey at all times. I think we can all say we've had periods in our life where we have been so broken that we have just wanted to hand the reins over to someone else, or have someone else get in the bus and just drive it a year forward, because it's just, we can't handle the pain of the healing, and we can't handle the pain of sitting in the pain, because it is really dark sometimes. And so the placebo effect is this amazing ability to believe that something is coming from an external source, whereas in fact you are creating it yourself. And that's the bit that I call magic, because we are magical, and magic is really just things that science hasn't caught up to. And science is catching up to energy and quantum physics and epigenetics and all this sort of stuff now, and it's fascinating. Like, it's really, really amazing to see. I love people like Bruce Lipton, and they're doing incredible work, but they're really focused around this. Bruce Lipton's work of epigenetics is very much placebo focused, because it's the ability for us to transform the environment of our own cells on our intention.
I mean, what I love about his work in particular, because of the fact that it is working with petri dishes and cells, I mean, you can't argue it. And that's what's such a great thing. It's like, okay, there is no argument, because I've done a lot of work with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And even though that that is also scientifically researched and things like that. However, I think what's great with Bruce Lipton is that, like, here is a petri dish, it's like, there's such a tangible evidence that can't be argued, and that then translates into the fact of how the placebo works and things like that, and the environment. And just now when we were talking, I was thinking about the idea of that when we talk about creating your own reality and envisioning and being the future self and all that sort of stuff. I suppose that's also a placebo effect that we then kind of believe, isn't it? Like in some ways. I mean, we're also sort of tapping into a quantum version of ourselves. However, it's that same sort of principle of being that version of yourself. And so then your cells respond, and your whole physical being responds to that version of yourself that you are envisioning or feeling into, I suppose. It's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yes, so powerful. And yeah, I mean, there's so much in that, but just coming back to Bruce Lipton for one moment, he repeated his studies for over 4,000 times with the same results before he took it to the scientific community. And he assumed that he would go in with this incredible information and wow the room. And what happened was everyone got up and walked out.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there is dogma in the scientific communities, because if you have there's so much ego, and there's so much money and control and power, and it is not pure science anymore. So when he presented this, what all these scientists are confronted with is the fact that their life's work might have been wrong.
Mm.
They can't accept it because, it takes time for a new paradigm of complete information about our existence that we never knew, to filter into the mainstream, to filter into the kind of global consciousness. And he was rejected for years and years and years over the findings of his work, even though nobody could actually disprove it. Nobody could do the tests that disprove it. But they could not accept it. Because imagine you've written 3 books and you're saying that everything is genetics and you're at the mercy of it, and and every illness you get, it comes from your family line. And then all of a sudden, all your 3 books are obsolete overnight. All your 10 books, all your 20
Well,
books.
I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? It's like when we think about all of the things that are now getting like changed and reviewed, and we have to go through that process. It's unfortunate in a way. I mean, I love fascia as well and studied anatomy for a long time. And when fascia came along, it kind of turned everything on its head, because it used to be like, okay, here's some bones, here's some muscles, and then there's this connective tissue that holds the bones and muscles together. And then, they used to just take all the fascia away so they could get to the part they're studying, the bones and muscle, and thought the fascia was just that spare stuff,
Yeah.
And now it's all turned upside down, where actually it's just this whole suit, this whole one blobby suit of fascia, and the bones and muscles are kind of floating inside there. So, I mean, that has to change all the anatomy books and everything else. So it's a huge thing to do. And I suppose that, like, just stick your head in the sand and ignore it because this is too big is kind of where they were at to some degree, as well as the fact that you say there's so many things, the implications to accepting that this now is the real reality. Like, I'm sure they sat there and not only thought about the books they've written, but the funding they're going to lose and the standing and what all of this means in allopathic medicine and all that sort of stuff. So it's better to reject this one person than to try and all embrace it and have this huge transformation. And it's a good example of everything across the whole society, because that could be the same in relationships and education and all those sort of stuff. Understanding that, hang on a minute, this isn't working. We've found a new piece that changes everything. Yeah. Okay, let's throw the piece away.
Absolutely. And I think that education is another massive area that this is happening at the moment, because so much of what kids learn at school is completely ridiculous and serves no purpose whatsoever. It's like, and so when the education system is kind of collapsing, and I think that's a wonderful thing, because out of that can grow something completely different.
Yeah.
But we are now moving so fast with knowledge, with information, that in all honesty, my kids are probably learning more from TikTok than they are from school.
Yeah.
Because I say to people, school was 30 years ago. How much have you ever used from, geometry? And have you ever calculated in your entire life the angle of an isosceles triangle since you left school? And they're like, no. And I'm like, do you remember anything you learned in science? No. This is how ridiculous it is. We are changing so fast now that kids are teaching themselves. My daughter has taught herself incredible cooking skills. Anything she really wants to learn.
YouTube is everything.
Yeah, she's come to me and she said, Mummy, I've decided school's a waste of time, but I know I need to be there for friends and things. So do you mind if I don't get A's, but I just develop all my real interests outside?
Oh, she's amazing.
And I'm like, well, hell yeah, give a crap if you go to university or not. Like, that used to be the beacon of,
I know,
academic intelligence, and now I think it's almost a waste of time. Like, you can learn so much about marketing, you can learn about business, you can learn, like, she started her own business at 10. She's so entrepreneurial.
And now we've got AI. It's an whole other game again,
all of that, the stuff that we thought we were going to need to learn at university is just going to be gone like that.
I know, exactly.
apart from a few things.
Well, remember, I mean, the things do disappear. I mean, remember we used to have encyclopedias, a whole wall of them. So we've come a long way in a short time, really. And so, when you think about the future, a lot of that stuff is just, we are in this new age, new time, and new way of educating ourselves, new way of looking at health, new way of looking at our physiology, new way of understanding sociology, so it's a fantastic, and it's a super, super exciting time. And I know it looks painful right now. And just in any healing process, it is painful. It is painful. It's like what you were saying. It's like going through that darkness and wanting somebody else to just take you a year ahead. We're kind of all like that right now. It's like, okay, can we just get through this now? Because this freaking hurts and it's uncomfortable and ugly. However, it's a positive process, I feel. I mean, we're kind of in this precarious time, but there's a lot of really amazing things, and people like your daughter, how amazing that they're coming along with that independence and that awareness of themselves. It's because you have worked with like ADHD children and all sorts of different populations, haven't you?
Yeah, I've worked with babies I've worked with people right up until the day they transition. And, that's such an honorable spiritual journey to undertake with people, because the biggest thing about Western society, I think, is that, people are so afraid of death, and they're so scared of dying. And I mean, I feel very, very lucky that I have had these, many, many spiritual experiences where I've been taken out of my body and I've been shown things, and so I don't have any fear of dying. And I I love to be able to work with, people that are terminal, because that healing journey doesn't mean you're not going to die. We're all going to die. The healing journey is finding the peace within, right? And finding the surrender, and finding the heart opening moments, and finding your own spirituality. This is the healing journey. People just associate healing with curing, because everybody associates illness with death, and so for me, we're eternal souls. We can't die, and we just shapeshift, right? And so that's really, really amazing. And I think in this society, like you say, we're breaking down. We normally, this is sort of happening in one area at a time, but at the moment there's such a massive collapse in so many areas. And I know amazing teachers, I know amazing nurses, I know amazing doctors, and they're excited by this because they've been stuck within, quite a dogmatic framework for a long time as well. So they've been very trapped within the parameters of what they have to do versus what they love and what they want to do. And yet this moment in time is like a void. It's like an electric potential of just so many opportunities, so many possibilities. And I think that is, what we really just need to hold on to at the moment.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I feel that too. And it's so interesting, isn't it? And maybe it's the circles we move in or whatever else, but I feel like there's so much optimism. And we spoke about TikTok and that earlier, and like social media, yes, it has got a dark side, obviously, but it also has such an amazing, it's whatever you choose to focus on. And there's so much humanity on there, and people, and what I like is reading the comments, because it gives me an insight about what society is about, and a lot of the time you read the comments and I'm like, oh, wow, everybody is like wanting to see those uplifting things, and they want to see these beautiful moments of humanity and people helping each other, and they are pulling each other up when there's something that looks like injustice, and people, so in, like, I would say, of course you've got your people who are a pain in the ass and stuff like that. However, I would say that most people really are wanting to nudge towards lightness and unity and community and things like that. It feels really, really good. And I know that when we look out there and we see all this other stuff, sometimes like it can feel like that's not the way it is. However, especially with what we are being told to look at. But when we choose to look at, like through social media, we get to choose what we look at, and we get to seek out humanity and see how much beautiful unity and humanity there actually is, you know. So it's a beautiful. I like what you're saying, and I agree. I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
It's like I spent 6 months in India, and so many people I meet, they're like, oh, I just couldn't handle India. And I say to them, you can't look at India with your eyes. You have to look at India with your heart.
Yeah.
And when you look at India with your heart, you'll see it's in the most spiritual place on the planet. But if you're looking with your eyes, it's like, oh my God, the pain, the suffering, the this, the that, and you get blinded by that, and then you don't experience the beauty within it. And it's the same with what's going on with the world. You know, we have to look at the world with our heart, not with our eyes, because our eyes deceive us, and our eyes will show us and lead us in the wrong direction often. And that's why I say, never, your first impressions, people that go, oh, my first impressions are always right. I'm like, mine aren't. Like I've been wrong loads of times. Like there's loads of people that I've had a first impression or a judgment over, and thought I've known. How can you know someone in 5 seconds? We must open our minds and open our hearts to what's really happening, and then we can see the full potential and the full beauty of this amazing new energy that's actually pouring in, that's available to us. It's right there, and our kids can find it, and they are just filled with the new earth energy already. It's incredibly beautiful what is actually available to us if we remove our eyes.
Yeah, beautiful. I like the way you put that. It's lovely. And I agree. And I keep saying to my clients, and it's a mantra that I repeat all the time, is just hold it lightly. Just everything, just hold it lightly, hold it lightly. So when you meet somebody and you might have a judgment of it, hold it lightly. And if you meet somebody and like, they're the best person I've ever met, hold it lightly. It's like just everything, just hold it lightly. And like whatever it is, it's like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Hold it lightly. Like it's just, because it's kind of like, it's like just wait, just wait a little bit, like wait to make a decision of like, do you like it or you don't like it? Or like, this is terrible, this is good. It's just hold it lightly. Like, don't reject it, or don't grasp it, but just like sit with it for a bit. Just let it unfold, and like same with the state of the world right now. And it's, oh my God, it's a disaster, or, oh no, we're all moving to the light. And it's like, hold it lightly, just be in this present moment, and just let things just kind of like be with yourself, be in yourself, and just sit back a little bit, and engage when asked to engage, and don't engage with everything just because you feel like you need to. And it's just a reminder to myself as well, just breathe.
Absolutely. And I call that the curiosity box. I say to people, just because you like this person and you like what they're saying, because what people tend to do is that the whole guru thing, right? Is it's like, I found my new guru, and you're like, hanging on the ears, and then he says something you don't like, or does something inappropriate, and suddenly it's like, right, he's out the back door.
That's so true.
And it's like, you don't have, learn how to discern. Just like something he's saying doesn't mean you have to take everything he's saying. It also doesn't mean to say you have to ditch him the minute he says something you don't resonate with.
Oh my goodness.
Like, learn how to hold what resonates, let what doesn't resonate go, and anything else, pop it in the curiosity box.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah. And I suppose hold it lightly relates to discernment, it's a good way to sort of reflect, because it is so true. It's like, oh my God. And I understand we're bombarded, and you're like, like, and we're searching, we're searching for our tribe a lot of the time, and we're searching for confirmation that what I believe and what I'm saying is what I'm thinking, because we are going through this big breakdown of the society. So a lot of people are searching for some grounding, because everybody's kind of just like losing their footing because of the consistency and what it is that they believed in and what they knew, and everything is now being questioned and changed. And so people are looking for something to hang on to give some certainty. So then when they find somebody like, oh yeah, that's it, that's now good, he's speaking what I need to hear. And then all of a sudden it's contradicting what you agree with, and then you're like, oh shit, now I'm lost again.
Because we have spent our life externalizing our truth, externalizing our identity. Our identity is based on the reflection of society, right? Because our identity, if I went and lived in the Amazon, in the bush, my identity would be completely different like that.
Totally.
Right? So we build everything around our identity. I'm an academic and I've got a job at the university and da 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 da, and and then you lose all of that. And what are you? Like, if you take away your academia, if you take away your degrees, if you take away all of this stuff, what are you underneath all of that? Because people fall apart when their identity falls apart.
Absolutely.
Because they don't know how to exist outside of their identity. And their identity is tied up in external factors and influences, which is why we are always drawn to someone else has the answer. Someone else can tell me what's going on, because we will do that until, I call it the path to power. We will do that until we are on the path to power, until we learn that our truth comes from within, until we learn how to stand in our truth regardless of what is being reflected back to us. And the last 4 years have been a perfect example of that. And it has really shown us how hard it is to stand in our truth, no matter what is being reflected back to us. So, outside of that, I think so many people are having an identity crisis at the moment. Their identity is falling away. Everything they thought they were is falling away, and they don't know what they are underneath, and they're scrabbling to try and hold on to the last little bits of what they thought they were, rather than just fully letting go and surrendering and trust.
It is scary. It is scary. And it's
Terrifying.
like, we spoke about this the other day in a conversation around those of us who've never really, like you say, the black sheep of the family. So you've always been questioning, and there's always been this like, something not quite right, and I'm not quite fitting in, and this doesn't really sit. So there hasn't been this really solid, I found my footing in society. There's been a questioning the whole time. So this time is not that unfamiliar to us. We're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a bit more extreme than what normal, but kind of it's okay. So it's really amazing. Like, when I look at everything you've done and what you offer, I mean, you're in the perfect place to support people who, like you say, who are having this identity crisis and who are having this moment, to support people back to themselves and back to that footing. Are you finding that a little bit, that there is more of that coming, of people going, I don't know anymore?
It's so much more. And what I'm finding is, it's used to be sort of the spiritual communities, and now it's spreading. And people that, have never thought they had a spiritual bone in their body are suddenly having these epic unfoldings. They're having spiritual experiences. They're realizing there's more to the soul. And that's a super exciting, magical potential for them to be in, because they are in that electrified space of change, and I find that place really, really exciting for people to be in, and that's my favorite type of people to work with. I say that they usually come to me when they're hanging onto the cliff, and they might have been there for 6 months, and their fingernails are scratched and bleeding, and they're just waiting for someone to go like this. So yeah, that's my favorite place for someone to be in, and I only heard, the expression with age comes wisdom. And I've always liked that expression, but I only heard the second part of that a couple of years ago. And it was with age comes wisdom, and wisdom comes from bad choices. And that just made so much more sense to me, and it also made me feel so much better about the millions of bad choices that I've made in my life. People say, oh, I wouldn't change a thing. It's made me who I am. Not me. I would go back and I would change so many things.
Yeah.
But it has made me who I am, and it has made me deeply compassionate for people in addiction, people in terrible positions, people that have done terrible things, because I truly know that the potential is in every single living being to be better. And that as soon as we know that we can do better, we have to do better, because in that pivotal point between the knowledge and the action, the universe will no longer accept us acting up in the old way when we know that there's a new way. So, that's when we'll start to get a kick in the ass. We'll start to, get ill, and we'll start to crumble, and our whole world will start to crumble around us. And that's the universe operating for us, not at us, not to us. So
it's an opportunity for course correction every time.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of those course correction opportunities throughout our life. But they will get louder and louder. And people really struggle to get out of their shame. And so I tell them, I used to have the Mel Hall of Shame. And and I really, really believe that when people learn how to work through their shame, through their self-judgment, through their self-criticism, and through their judgment and criticism of others, that they find a beautiful harmony and a much more peaceful place on the other side.
Amazing. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Well, I know that I'm always quite conscious of not taking up more time than, I could sit here for 2 hours easily talking with you, and there's so much more I wanted to cover, but we will get to those things as well. So I will in the show notes and things like that, I'll talk about where to find you and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure that you're going to get people wanting to do that, because it's vast. We haven't even spoken about everything that you offer and everything you do, but your website's amazing. It's got such a great information and some great freebies and things, so people can get an introduction to your work as well, which I think is really great. And obviously, like you say, you've just got this new community and things, so there's many ways that people can get into your energy field, which is awesome. So thank you. I so appreciate you spending time and sharing what you do and your vision. And so thank you for your energy.
Thanks, Wendy. I love talking to you, and I know we're going to have more of it.
Many, many more.